Hello, dear friends. You will have heard this alleged story many times, but the news is that it has been confirmed by remote viewing. Opinion piece. Secret agreements with ETs. Confirmed by remote viewing. Eisenhower felt cheated by the pact. Highly classified presidential meetings. Did negotiations with the Federation fail? Current leaders don't want to disclose agreements. Were we sold out in exchange for technological trinkets? Researchers find living fungi on Mars. Worldwide alert for the uncontrolled fall of the Chinese rocket. Spain loses 70 million tourists and 79 billion euros. Russia cuts dollar and euro from its reserves in favor of gold and yuan. Let's start. There has been much talk in mystery forums about the alleged secret meetings held between US presidents and visitors from other worlds, and the subsequent agreements that emerged from them. These highly classified events remain secret to this day, but Dr. Michael Sala has added to this stream of information several recent remote viewing sessions conducted by Dr. Brown of the Farsight Institute using a scientifically rigorous protocol. The remote viewers were able to independently confirm that high-level human representatives of the Eisenhower administration met with different groups of visitors who arrived in spacecraft at remote locations where the meetings took place. These beings came from competing alliances. Some were for human appearance from the Galactic Federation, while others were either reptilian from the Draco Empire or allied with them as the Orion Collective. Failure. Negotiations with the Federation failed, while agreements were reached with the Draco and Orion. They gave technologies in exchange for human genetics or were allowed to establish bases on Earth. Eisenhower felt great regret for giving anyway something valuable for what he recognized as technological trinkets. On the other hand, the Draconians felt they had won a significant victory over their Federation enemies. The human side was negotiating from a position of weakness, as it didn't see any of the different groups as enemies, but as neutral bidders in a negotiation. In contrast, the reptilian allies saw the terrestrial human side as natural enemies, who could be cunningly manipulated and exploited, while finding technological support. In fact, they abused the signed pact and overreached in their experiments. This is how Dr. Brown summarized the remote viewing data. There were some meetings between various groups of visitors and one or more presidents and their representatives. The strangers were not all of one mind. They all wanted something. Some seemed to want to warn humankind not to come to an agreement with other groups. All wanted an alliance of some kind, but the American leadership also wanted something. In fact, the human leadership seemed desperate for an agreement, and that desperation led to a pact that many now deeply regret. This is one of the reasons for the continued secrecy. The deal was so bad that the current human leadership is afraid to talk about it. Silence continues from the ET side and from the human leadership side. Federation advice was ignored and agreements were signed with the draconians that were later regretted by President Eisenhower. Frustration. It is known that Eisenhower was very unhappy with the way the Majestic 12 group was handling the issue. While President Truman had created the group in September 1947, Eisenhower gave it much more power following the recommendations of national security advisors such as Nelson Rockefeller. Eisenhower privately expressed his disappointment to trusted military aides and even threatened to invade the facility at Area 51 where MJ-12 personnel were storing and studying advanced exotic technologies reverse engineered with limited success, as Bob Lazar confirmed in 1989. Meanwhile, a growing number of people were being experimented on, to put it mildly. Eisenhower's realization that dealing with aliens was bad led to his famous farewell speech on the dangers of the military-industrial complex and warning President Kennedy about the MJ-12 group. The moral of this story is that we should befriend the Galactic Federation of Worlds, whose representatives first warned us about the dangers of dealings with the Draconian Alliance and have played an important behind-the-scenes role in aiding humanity's great awakening. Human political leaders are afraid to reveal the various agreements reached with beings from other worlds. The public reaction upon learning the truth would be utter disgust and an immediate demand to cancel such agreements. According to Laura Eisenhower, great-granddaughter of the president, there are two types of regressive beings. There are the Greys who exchange technology in exchange for genetic experimentation, and the reptilians who control the world by camouflaging themselves among the ruling elite, and who feed on our fear. Some do so by driving us to artificial intelligence and throughout the use of transhumanism, which has the capacity to wipe out all biological life. But the benevolent are winning, because it is enough to accept the regenerative power of nature. It is only that we consent to accept evil, believing that good is no longer possible. In the darkness we have to know that the light is there, and it is then that alchemy occurs and miracles happen. Economy. Dow Jones hits record highs. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, Wall Street broadest barometer of stock value, hit record highs Wednesday as previously beaten down industrial and leisure stock rallied. The IBEX 35 remains on the verge of reaching 9,000 points. The Spanish IBEX 35 index returned to a record high on Thursday at 8,982.2 points, thanks to a rise of 0.16%, very close to the psychological level of 9,000 points in an scenario that continues to be marked by corporate results. Will history repeat itself? With the selective indexes recently reaching all-time highs, many experts are wondering if there is a bubble that will soon burst behind the stock market's rise. Bank of America analysts have published a report in which they point to some equity benchmarks that are currently at levels similar to those seen before the bear market that followed the 2008 financial crisis burst, according to Leticia Aragüez Cortés. The Ether cryptocurrency sets a new record high above $3,500. Ether, the second most widely used cryptocurrency, set today a new all-time high above 3,500, although it has subsequently deflated and is now hovering around 3,450. 500,000 US jobless claims. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits fell to a seasonally adjusted 498,000 for the week ended May 1st, the Labor Department said Thursday, marking the lowest reading in 30 months. Spain creates 134,396 jobs in April and regains 90 million affiliates. The number of people affiliated with Social Security rose by 134,396 on average in April, and the number of unemployed fell by 39,012 as measures continue to be relaxed. Russia cuts dollar and euro from its reserves in favor of gold and yuan. The Central Bank of Russia said in its annual report that in 2020 it reduced the share of the euro, dollar and pound in its international reserves in favor of gold, yuan and other currencies. Spain loses 70 million tourists and 79,000 million euros. The first 12 months affected by the sharp drop in economic activity resulted in 70 million international tourists lost and 79,000 million euros of income left by these travelers vanished from the Spanish economy. Some Spanish regions will continue to have restrictions, others will not. The autonomous communities will be able to lift or continue to impose limitation on mobility. The new government decree seeks the endorsement of judges for the maintenance of restrictions. The Valencian community, Madrid and Catalonia will relax the measures, but the Basque community and Murcia wish to maintain the perimeter closures. End of curfew in Andalusia. The Andalusian government has decided that the community will no longer have curfew from this Sunday, when the state of alarm ends, and will allow the opening of the hospitality sector until 0 hours, and the reopening after more than a year of closure, of nightlife until 2 hours. The Andalusian government has proposed a desescalation in 3 phases. Phase 1, stabilization, which will last from May 9th to May 31. Second phase of advanced from June 1st and June 21st. And phase 3rd of normalization from June 21st onwards. Street parties. Police in Catalonia are preparing for hordes of lockdown-weary rebels to take to the streets when the national state of emergency expires on Sunday, while Spain's regional leaders express frustration over uncertainty about what comes next. Complaints to the Ombudsman increased by 26% in 2020 due to loss of rights. The acting Ombudsman, Francisco Fernández Marugan, handled a total of 28,020 complaints in 2020, an increase of 26.4% over the 20,616 complaints registered a year earlier. Science and technology. Living fungi found on Mars. Researchers studied photos of the Martian surface taken by rovers and orbiters. They say there are repeating and changing patterns of dark spots. They also saw evidence of circular spots that appeared and grew within a few days. These are evidence on fungi, mold, lichens, algae, and similar species, they said. The authors say it would be surprising if there were no life on the Martian surface. Worldwide alert for the fall of the Chinese rocket. Forecasts indicate that Spain and several countries in America could be areas where Americas in plural, several countries, could be areas where the debris could fall, although the north of the peninsula would be outside the danger zone. However, countries such as Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Brazil, and Argentina, await with uncertainty the trajectory of the rocket, which could fly over them. What is known is that the orbital inclination of the rocket's central stage is 41.5 degrees, so it could be orbiting at the height of Madrid, New York, Beijing, southern Chile, or Wellington, New Zealand. SpaceX successfully lands its Starship rocket prototype after 4 consecutive failures. SpaceX Starship rocket prototype has successfully landed during a flight test Wednesday in Boca Chica, Texas, after 4 consecutive failed attempts since last December that ended in explosions. Artificial intelligence pilots a plane. The U.S. Air Force Skyborg autonomous piloting system took the helm of an aircraft for the first time last week, when it flew an unnamed combat air vehicle in a test at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. Rain-seeding drones for Emirates. A new method of bringing rain to places where water is scarce is to be tested using drones designed and manufactured in wet England. The drones carry an electrical charge that is released into a cloud, giving cloud droplets the jolt they need to clump together and fall as rain. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.